Hi, so actually it's the Doc and Dukov show now, and this is Alicia Dukov, sitting here with Dr. Gregory Jenkins.
Hello, folks.
He's now my doc, so the show is now called My Doc and Dukov, and welcome everybody. Before we get started today, I just have this to read. The fire department has reported an overturned ambulance at Valencia Boulevard and McBean Parkway. There are no injuries, but traffic will be slow in that area, so keep that in mind, you guys.
I wonder if an ambulance responded to the accident. We're out of ambulances in the city, baby.
Oh, gosh. I hope not.
Poor kids.
Oh, wow. So, well, I hope that doesn't slow anybody down. I hope nobody was hurt. We will be starting our show regardless, and hopefully those listening, if there is traffic, can tune in to KHTS AM 1220 and join us today. We're going to be talking about sex through the ages, and how the common misconception in society is that people who grow older in years have less intimacy or less of a drive for intimacy, and it's actually quite the opposite. So we're calling today's show the 70-year itch. Not the 7-year itch, the 70-year itch.
Sex and the seniors, the 70-year itch.
Sex and seniors. And it's not just sex, intimacy in general. You know, just wanting to be close to your partner, wanting to have that collaboration and that communication. What can you talk about on your medical side that relates to this, as far as if there are medical issues that arise in later years that may have something to do with a lack of a sex drive, or what happens physiologically to us that increases our sex drive as we get older?
Well, as far as if we work as seniors, sexually work, for men, there's a lot of problems. It could be the medicine they're taking that's causing erection problems. It could be their mind. Their wife may have passed away some time ago, and they just feel odd having sex with a new partner. But I'd say most of the time the problems are maintaining an erection.
Okay, and why would that be? What happens to a man in their later years?
Well, the testosterone level goes down, which happens in all males, just like the women's estrogen levels go down. Then when those levels are down, the erections are not forceful.
Or they don't last. So they
don't last.
That's what you mean by that.
So the blood flow sometimes is decreased in the penis, and therefore you don't get a good erection, because if you don't have good blood flow, then the blood doesn't back up to make the penis erect. Right.
And so I guess in general, like for males and females, there are medical issues that would cause a lack of a sex drive or lack of wanting any kind of intimacy that would span across genders. So for males and females, something like heart disease would impact them equally, but in their own ways biologically. Whereas there are certain ones that are just for males, and there are certain ones that are just for females, like menopause is just female.
Well, there is a theory that men have menopause. Also, they call it andropause, because the testosterone is called an androgen. And when men have the andropause, that's when their prostate stops working well, gets too big. Their hormone levels are low, and a lot of medicines will cause your penis not to maintain an erection.
Well, I mean, on that note, though, so are we talking more about just the physiological? So when they have a problem maintaining their erection, do they still want the sex, and they're very frustrated
they want
generally?
It, and then, maybe the medicines that they're taking, and many times it's just their mind. I know patients that have had, basically are taking like a sugar pill, and they're having problems with erection because of the stress in their life or their background. But from the psychiatric point of view, what do you think?
Oh, well, the whole psychological component of it is a completely different thing, right? So
and there's no test for that.
No.
There's no blood tests.
Well, there are no blood tests, but there are definitely tests for, the Beck's Depression Inventory Scale and anxiety tests and things like that. Down to personality tests, the MMPI, too. It's like if you have that kind of personality that is somebody who exhibits a high sex drive all through life, that's a certain personality type that is an exuberant, open.
I know what you're talking about.
Extroverted. Yeah, not you at all, Dr. Jenkins.
That's not me, no.
This is the most right-brained doctor I've ever met in my life. You are so balanced as far as you have the logical, pragmatic side of you, and you're also that fun, open, extroverted guy that uses the imagination and is creative, and you did a lot of acting and stuff. So it's great to have such a balanced professional.
Well, they should test for this.
On what?
Before you apply for graduate school.
How balanced are you to make it through grad school?
Because, you have to be balanced for all these different majors or types, whether you're a dentist, a doctor, psychologist, engineer.
I've diagnosed myself at least 50 times through grad school and now in my doctoral candidacy.
So how are you feeling?
The diagnoses keep changing.
Good.
Ask me next month.
I may have said this on another show, but when I was in med school, one of the women in my class, she had been reading about meningitis. So she marches herself down to the emergency room and demanded a spinal tap to make sure she didn't have meningitis. I said, "Wow, that's pretty brave."
That's intense.
Right.
I think I only got as bad as, oh my gosh, do I have borderline personality disorder?
It's interesting. When she was in college, her bachelor's degree was in dance. So you think she'd be very balanced like me. She's a dance major.
Oh, but maybe that's why she was freaked out about her spine, because she was, so flexible and doing all that stuff. I mean, I know a lot of dancers who are freaked out about their knees and have to have all this knee surgery later and, discs out of place and all of that, which also would, tie into when you in later years don't feel like having sex or you feel a lack of intimacy with your partner. I think this would happen anytime in life. It's one of the big ones that I'm reading about here is that any kind of chronic pain that you're in, I mean, it really debilitates you at any age. But when you're older, you have more illnesses that would contribute to or create that chronic pain, like arthritis.
Right. And I think, intimacy,
sciatica
for seniors is difficult because for both sides of the couple, because it's kind of like two moving windows, and they have to have them line up so that both people can jump through.
Totally.
And get onto the pleasure of it.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I actually, through all the reading that I've done, I had to take a lot of developmental psychology classes from undergrad through grad school, now in the doctorate again. And so many of the lifespan, especially about sexuality courses that you take, they talk about how we go through these dips as males and females. A man hits his sexual peak at 18. 18 years old, you guys hit the top of that mountain. You're raring to go.
I peaked too soon.
That's how a lot of men feel. So when they're in their, 20s, early 30s, they're not as virile as they were when they were in their early 20s, right straight out of the gate, raring to go. A woman, get this, doesn't hit her sexual peak until 40.
So after having all the babies.
Right. I mean, it's kind of unfair if you think about it in nature.
Yeah, something to look forward to.
Well, we do in a way, but here's why it's unfair. With the window you were just talking about, I'm so glad you brought that up. The windows have to align, yes. And what that means is, so by the time the man hits like early 50s to mid 50s, he has what is expected to be a midlife crisis, okay? And generally during that time, he has this spike in testosterone feeling. He feels like that bull again. He feels like he's out and ready to go. And he wants to, go and sow his wild oats. And he's got this final chance, he feels, to get out there and be that, virile, amazing bull in the meadows.
And how does that work out for most guys, I wonder?
Well, let's talk about how that works out for most women.
Okay.
The women of the same age group is around the time they go through menopause. How unfair is that? So menopause, for a woman at this time in her life, is generally something that's going to delubricate her. She's not going to have that essence of wild sexual potency and that feeling of romping through the meadows. She's not in that phase right now. She was when she hit her peak at 40, and hopefully those 10 years, whether she was married or not, she was feeling her own beautiful sexual opening like a lotus flower, because that's the time in a woman's life that occurs. So the window that you're talking about can actually happen, and this is the topic of today's show. That window can actually happen if those two, that male and female that missed each other in the 50s because she was going through menopause and he had that spike in sexuality, they can actually meet up again in the 60s and 70s. And this is what society thinks is the absolute opposite of what the truth is. Society thinks that these older people don't have sex. This is when that window meets. They both open again and they go, hurrah, you're still alive. I'm still alive. And hey, I'm alive down there. Let's get it on. And they actually can have an incredibly fruitful, really multidimensional sexual relationship in their 60s and 70s. Thus today's topic, the 70-year itch.
And now you'll probably see plenty of advertisements in the papers and on television for
Viagra.
Sex aids for men.
Right, Viagra.
And, they have that, like the same commercial. They have a brunette and a blonde and a Latin person. They hit everybody.
Which commercials are you talking about?
For Viagra.
Oh, for Viagra. Right. I did see one that was really cute a little while back about, and they were older. He was in his 70s, it looked like. He had this gray curly hair.
They look 50s.
I don't know if you saw this one. This was adorable, though. He was Italian. It looked like an Italian villa they were in, or someplace in like, Porta di Marmi or Positano. It was like on the cliffs overlooking the Mediterranean Sea. And he wanted to have intercourse with this gorgeous woman that looked like Sophia Loren. And he's in the bathroom and he's sprucing himself up and he's getting the aftershave and he has his one little blue pill and he's ready to take it and he's all excited and it pops out the window. And so he goes chasing after this pill.
Down the hill to Amalfi Coast.
The Amalfi Coast. Well, not a bad place to be running down a hill. But by the time he came back, I think the end of the commercial was that she had fallen asleep or something. It's funny because I think we tend to overlook this population regarding intimacy and sexual relations when in fact, statistically, they are one of the most potent and active of all. And there are psychological reasons behind that if you want to know. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay,
I've been waiting for this one.
Okay, cool. Well, see, now you have something to look forward to.
I'm actually taking notes now.
I don't think you need to take notes, Jenkins. So here's one of the biggest components. Number one, say that the couple's been married, most of their lives and they have kids. At this age, they're empty nesters. Okay. Let's just say the kids didn't leave when they were 18. Maybe they left in what is more normal today, around 26, into their late 20s because of today's economy and everything's just crazy. So kids are leaving the nest later these days, statistically. Bless you, Justin. And so because they're leaving the nest later these days, this empty nest syndrome that occurs, that has always occurred in nature here, is happening a little bit later. So people in their 60s are now feeling this vibrancy. It's like a second wind because they have the house to themselves. They can enjoy the kitchen floor again if they want to. They can go on these weekend holidays that they used to do in their early 30s or late 20s before they had the kids. I mean, it's been generations since they've had that liberation and that freedom to explore themselves sexually and explore each other romantically and intimately. So there's this beautiful, free, open space that they sort of viscerally feel between them around this time. So that's a definite spike in, hey, how you doing? So there's that.
I wonder if there's like singles clubs for seniors.
Oh my gosh, I think there probably is.
I don't know. I wonder.
Definitely online dating sites that are 70 plus, 70 over. I think they call it the silver-haired sirens or something. I just made that up. If that doesn't exist, that probably could. Silver-haired sirens. So that's one of the concepts. What do you think another one is? Before I tell you.
Okay. Concepts for the seniors clubs?
Well, no. He's creating his own dating site.
I'm just looking online right now,
You're like creating your own now.
Check that website.
Docs only. No, for one of the reasons why older generations have such a beautiful, potent sex life. What would be one of the reasons?
They're retired.
Yes, that's a good one.
And they're getting their check every month. They don't have to
no stress.
Worry about things.
Or different stresses.
Yeah.
Maybe they have a stress about their medical related issues and they didn't before, but they don't have the stress of maybe paying that house off. Maybe the house has been paid off. They don't have the stress of having to go to that 9 to 5 anymore or please the boss anymore. They've earned their right in life to be who they are on a very emotional level now. Like as you go through your life and you grow, you evolve, you care less, a little bit less in every phase of your life that you live through about what other people think of you. There's a liberation that accumulates out of knowing who you are.
I think sometimes also there's loneliness.
Oh, we're going to flip over to why they...
No, I'm thinking that, that's one time is loneliness, and that sometimes make them go search. Go try to find somebody to be with.
That's a really good point. Yeah. Maybe that is one of the reasons statistically. But you're saying, so like because of the loneliness, maybe their spouse died, or maybe they're just not with anybody.
They're just single now, right?
They want that partner, they want that companion, and so that would lead them to being a little bit more open and extroverted sexually. I
think so. I really think so.
Or just intimately in relationships.
I think it's more companionship and intimacy, not necessarily sexual.
For that population, I would think so.
Right.
Although when you're lonely at any age, sex in and of itself is a feeling of being connected to somebody.
Well,
that's why it gets us in trouble. Yeah, right. And that's why it gets a lot of people in trouble, because we use it for the wrong reasons. We use it for that companionship, or we use it for that feeling loved, feeling connected to somebody, when really it's just for that moment, that sexual act. Unless you are in love with that person and know that person, it really only feeds, it fills a void for a very short period of time. And then they're back to that loneliness, because it's not an everlasting meal. It's a very quick fix. It's like a sugar bar.
Snack.
It's a snack. It's like eating that candy bar at 4:00 when you have that sugar dip. And what we want to do is go in the direction I'm leading us now, where there's another factor psychologically as to why these older generations have a lot of sex, is that they know who they are. A lot of them are more comfortable with themselves sexually, emotionally, spiritually, physically, psychologically than they ever have been in their lives. And research studies have been done asking these questions and having these surveys where the people write saying, I know myself better now. I don't really care what I look like naked anymore. I used to stress out about that all the time in my 30s and 40s, but guess what? This is my body. Take it or leave it. And I love it. So when we love ourselves and we're comfortable with ourselves, there's a freedom and a liberation sexually that can ensue from that we can then share with whatever potential partner we have. And so I guess that ties into what we were just talking about with this feeling of like not really, being lonely or not being lonely. It's maybe that lack of loneliness that can stem from being older is that they know who they are. So they're not searching for the sex meaninglessly. And if they are, they're searching for it knowing they just want the sex. They're not searching for it yearning to fill a void that cannot be filled just by sex. Is that making sense?
I think it makes sense because the reason that we have sex changes from 18 to 78, 88, whatever year it is. But the reasons change for it. And, when you're younger, I think it's just more the biological issues that you have that mating drive. As you get older, I do really think it's just intimacy that we're looking for. Yeah,
that companionship. So, when we come back from the break, we're going to talk a little bit more about the medical related side of this and also the psychological. We're going to keep going with why that population in their older years is having such a great time.
We should have had this show at the senior center today.
I hope somebody's listening from the senior center. At any age, as long as our hearts are beating and as long as we are breathing, we are sexual beings that crave intimacy and connection. And so unless you're looking for it in the wrong ways, which is what we just touched on, in your earlier years, you may be looking for those connections just to fill that void. But in your later years, hopefully you don't have one because you know who you are. Right. And that allows for such a fantastic level of intimacy to occur.
One of the other shows I'd said something because I was, I talked to a lot of kids being, over 18. And a lot of them just want the intercourse. They don't want anything else. They say, I just want to hook up.
Well, those are their hormones racing back and forth.
And that's a lot different than I was. But we got one more minute left.
I don't know. Is anybody ever different from, when you start, your sexual blossoming, when the hormones are starting to rock and roll? I don't know if anybody's really different across the board. I think it affects us all in the same kind of ways within the same time period. That's the developmental psychology courses coming out of me right now. If you guys are listening, we are at KHTS AM 1220. And the number here, if you wanted to chime in, is 661-298-5487. That is 661-298-KHTS. We'd love to hear from you if you have something to say.